think about going to the beginnings of a nation brand when it relates to something like discovery and tourism, I like to go back to earlier literature. What did people first say and write about a country when the rest of the world only knew it perhaps through little shards of pottery or tapestry or paintings? And in this case, I loved looking back at what Mark Twain said back in 1896 when he went on a round-the-world tour for a year trying to pay back his debts. He made some silly investments. And in that, he spent about 2 months in India. And this is a guy who normally could distill the most complex things into one cynical, skeptical, wry distillation. In India, he could not do that. The array of contrasts were so amazing that all he could do was just surrender to a giant exclamation mark saying, "This is India!" He just couldn't believe the contrasts there. Now, on the one hand, that's wonderful. But if you think about branding a country, how difficult it is if it's an entire gamut, this array of contrasts. So when India was trying to develop its tourism in a very much concerted effort with the government back in the early 2000s, Ogilvy and Mather worked with it to create this sort of exclamation point in awe of India called Incredible India. And that's stuck ever since then. And from a tourism point of view, that's worked remarkably well. In fact, tourism went up from $3.5 billion to $18 billion in receipts in just a decade using that kind of campaign across a number of agencies. When you go to brand a nation, there are different constituencies who are really tugging at that brand and want it to work on their behalf. Among them, there's usually the constituency of the Tourist Promotion Board, if there is one in a country, or the hospitality and travel sector for tourists. But there is also the foreign direct investment and portfolio investment side. And they're very, very different in terms of emotional versus rational and how you want those audiences to view you. Something that you see as exotic and amazing and beyond control is wonderful for an adventurous tourist, but not such a great ride for an investor. And so I think one of the real challenges for an incredible India, which captured what makes India incredible for tourists, is a little bit uneasy in terms of foreign direct investment, where you actually want quite dull, quite predictable, quite boring, and growth. You want consistency, predictability, and growth. You don't want incredible India. You want, as one conference said, credible India when it comes to investment. So India has often baked into part of its investment brand a few amazing attributes, being the world's largest democracy, the world's largest English-speaking country, for example, and used those as attractions for would-be foreign direct investment. There are a couple of problems with that. One, if you look at the world's most famous democracy, the United States of America, you find nothing but dysfunction at the moment. So actually leveraging democracy as expressed by Americans at this point may not be such a great brand attribute.